The story begins with Mr. Han Bong-gu, a man with an intellectual appearance and a friendly demeanor, being appointed as the temporary homeroom teacher after the previous teacher suffered an unfortunate accident. From the very first day, Mr. Han made a strong impression on the students, quickly winning their affection. He showed genuine concern for each student and subtly hinted that anyone facing difficulties could visit his office for a private conversation. Right after the first class, a student did just that. The student was Kim Seul-gi, a girl who was constantly ostracized and looked down upon by her classmates. Leading the bullying against Seul-gi was Yu-na, who relentlessly made Seul-gi's life miserable. During lunch, Seul-gi was often harassed by Yu-na and her clique, sometimes tripped, causing her tray of food to spill onto the floor. However, this time, a kind-hearted male student stood up for Seul-gi, fearlessly confronting Yu-na. Overwhelmed by the constant pressure, Seul-gi sought out Mr. Han for help. To her surprise, before she could even speak, Mr. Han accurately described everything she was going through. Through Mr. Han, Seul-gi learned that she and Yu-na were once close friends. Their friendship crumbled after Seul-gi defended another classmate from Yu-na's bullying. Yu-na then labeled Seul-gi a traitor and turned against her. When the bullied student transferred schools, Seul-gi became Yu-na's new target. Mr. Han's profound understanding left Seul-gi shaken. He offered her a cup of chamomile tea to calm her nerves. As she took a sip, a sense of relaxation washed over her. She briefly wondered if the previous homeroom teacher had told Mr. Han her story. Unbeknownst to her, Mr. Han possessed the special ability, the power to see into the hearts of others. Seul-gi asked for his help in reintegrating with her classmates. Mr. Han gently handed her a seating chart of the classroom. He explained that if she simply drew a line connecting her seat to any classmates, that person would automatically become her friend. Seul-gi was skeptical, but she tried it anyway. Astonishingly, it worked. Two students sitting at a nearby table initiated a conversation with her. For the first time in a long time, Seul-gi felt like she wasn't alone. The feeling of acceptance and care brought tears of joy to her eyes. Her two new friends comforted her, making her feel loved. However, just then, Yu-na appeared. Her arrival instantly changed the atmosphere. She wasn't pleased to see her friends talking to Seul-gi. Despite their attempts to persuade Yu-na to let go of the past, she still held a grudge against Seul-gi for her previous betrayal. After school, Seul-gi quickly sought out Mr. Han again. Human desire is insatiable. Despite having gained the attention of two friends, she wasn't satisfied. Her yearning for attention burned brightly. She wanted the entire class to notice her, so she asked Mr. Han to lend her the seating chart once more. Her eyes couldn't hide her ambition. This time, however, Mr. Han wasn't as accommodating. "Everything in this world has a price," he said calmly, his voice laced with meaning. He agreed to her request, but on the condition that she sign a contract. Seul-gi hesitated for a few minutes, but ultimately agreed. As soon as she agreed, her fingers spontaneously severed, a drop of blood falling onto the contract and instantly transforming into her name. The contract was sealed. Mr. Han looked at Seul-gi with an unreadable expression and revealed another secret. If she drew a solid line connecting her name to someone else's, their friendship would become stronger than ever. But if she drew a crossed line, the relationship would end permanently. Seul-gi felt a thrill of anticipation. Mr. Han reminded her to think carefully before making any decisions. Back in the classroom, Yu-na came face to face with Seul-gi, the girl she perpetually scorned. This time, however, Seul-gi was different. Seeing Seul-gi's smug expression, Yu-na felt a surge of irritation. Seul-gi didn't miss the opportunity to make Yu-na understand the isolation she had endured. Quietly, she took out the seating chart Mr. Han had given her and carefully drew a cross between Yu-na and her two closest friends. Instantly, the two girls, who had been chatting happily with Yu-na, abruptly stopped and walked away without a word, leaving Yu-na stunned and bewildered. Seul-gi smirked, her eyes gleaming with triumph. For the first time, Yu-na felt a flicker of unease. Seul-gi continued to wield the power of the chart. She drew more lines connecting herself to other classmates while systematically erasing Yu-na's connections. A sense of joy returned to Seul-gi. She regained the confidence that had been stolen from her. Conversely, Yu-na became the target of bullying. The very friends who had once sided with her now turned their backs. During lunch, she was tripped, her tray clattering to the floor, a mirror image of Seulgi's past experiences. The class looked at Yuna with disdain. She realized she had become the outcast. Karma had come swiftly and cruelly. Seulgi suddenly remembered the boy who had helped her during her difficult times. Without hesitation, she drew a line connecting herself to him. Miraculously, from that day on, he became closer to Seulgi than ever before, even though he already had a girlfriend, the class president. This sudden shift didn't go unnoticed by the class president. Angry and confused, she confronted Seulgi, demanding to know why her boyfriend was spending so much time with her. Fearing her secret would be exposed, Seulgi tried to evade the questions, but the class president was persistent. She pressed Seulgi, sensing that she knew something she wasn't saying. Caught off guard, Seulgi momentarily panicked but quickly regained her composure. She coolly accused the class president of being self-absorbed and inconsiderate. Where was she when her classmates were being bullied? Did she ever care about them? Seulgi's words stunned the class president into silence. She couldn't argue, knowing she had never fulfilled her responsibilities. Seulgi turned and walked away, leaving the class president standing there speechless. As time passed, Seulgi grew tired of her glamorous yet empty life. Every day was filled with fake smiles and hollow compliments. When her gaze inadvertently fell upon Yuna, now isolated and alone, Seulgi felt a pang of guilt and realized her own selfishness. She decided to do something to rectify her mistakes. Seulgi went to Mr. Han's office, hoping to restore everything to the way it was. However, Mr. Han simply shook his head, his eyes cold. "I warned you," he said. "Once you draw on the chart, there's no going back." His words were like a bucket of cold water, plunging Seulgi into despair. Unbeknownst to them, the tense conversation between Seulgi and Mr. Han had been secretly observed by the class president and her boyfriend. They stealthily took pictures as evidence to expose Seulgi's secret. But when they checked the photo, something strange happened. In the frame, Seulgi's face was clearly visible, but Mr. Han was nowhere to be seen. Both of them were bewildered, unable to comprehend what was happening. A chilling feeling began to creep into their hearts. Back in the classroom, Seulgi was surrounded by her classmates as usual. The boy who had helped her wanted to take her outside, but the others stopped him, unwilling to lose her presence. During the commotion, the seating chart Seulgi had carefully hidden fell out of her pocket. At that moment, a glass of water from a nearby table spilled onto the paper right on the line connecting Seulgi and the boy. As a result, he was instantly freed from the chart's influence. Confused, he couldn't understand why he was there or why he had been so drawn to Seulgi. Amidst the chaos, Seulgi realized the danger. She grabbed the chart and ran out of the classroom, terrified that her secret would be revealed. Seeing her flee, her classmates didn't hesitate to chase after her. While running away, Seulgi, panicked, fled to the rooftop. But unexpectedly, Yuna was already there, standing precariously close to the edge, her eyes dark with anguish. A chill ran down Seulgi's spine as she realized Yuna was contemplating something drastic. For the first time throughout this ordeal, the consequences of her actions truly hit Seulgi. She approached Yuna, trying to dissuade her from doing anything reckless. Yuna looked at Seulgi coldly, her voice laced with mockery. "How does it feel to have everyone's attention? Are you happy?" Yuna's words pierced Seulgi's heart. Now, all she felt was regret. She wished for nothing more than for things to go back to the way they were, where everyone in the class got along. Seulgi reached out to Yuna, hoping to stop her. Yuna gently took Seulgi's hand, but then whispered in her ear, "If you want things to go back to the way they were, you should disappear." Yuna's words were like a knife twisting in Seulgi's heart. At that moment, her classmates found her and continued to surround her. Seulgi tried to escape but was held back. During the struggle, the class chart slipped from her grasp once again and was tragically trampled and torn apart. The paper, which had once given Seulgi power and attention, was now nothing more than a worthless scrap. As the chart lost its effect, her classmates seemed to snap out of a trance, looking at Seulgi with vacant eyes before walking away, leaving her alone with the remnants of the torn chart. Seulgi completely collapsed. She realized that everything was over. From that day on, Seulgi truly became an invisible shadow in the class. No one could see or hear her. Each day, the chair she used to occupy became an empty space that no one noticed. On her desk, only a chilling message remained: "Don't go to the homeroom teacher's office." Consumed by despair, Seul-gi finally made a decision. She jumped from the rooftop. Mr. Han appeared at that very moment, gently carrying her lifeless body away. Seul-gi's soul, however, was trapped forever in an old mirror at the end of the hallway, a place no one dared to approach. Just then, a male student with a bruised face and a weary demeanor walked towards the old mirror tucked away in the hallway. He was followed by a group of delinquent students. The student was Oh-gi-cheol, a senior in Mr. Han's class. Oh-gi-cheol was once a notorious school kingpin. But after defending his close friend from bullies, he was defeated and lost his leadership position. Now, Oh-gi-cheol was merely an outcast, defeated in the school's hidden power struggle. Determined to resolve his situation, Oh-gi-cheol sought out Mr. Han's office, the only person who could help him now. Although he knew fighting in school was forbidden, he had no other choice but to seek the homeroom teacher's assistance. Anxiety and hope mingled as Oh-gi-cheol entered Mr. Han's room. However, he was surprised to hear the teacher's advice. If you want to regain your position, you must defeat the current school kingpin and reclaim your power. This advice caught Oh-gi-cheol off guard, as it wasn't simply about avoiding conflict, but directly confronting the strongest. Mr. Han knew all about Oh-gi-cheol's past. He had once been the school's leader, but instead of using his power to bully others, Oh-gi-cheol formed a group to protect and help weaker students. This act angered many of the delinquent students. Those who opposed him found a way to overthrow him and install someone else in his place. Oh-gi-cheol was turned into a failure. How can the good students ever fight against the delinquents? Mr. Han spoke as if he knew everything from the beginning. Oh-gi-cheol bitterly acknowledged this, but still held a sliver of hope that things could change. Then, Mr. Han pulled a special stamp from his drawer, pressed it onto Oh-gi-cheol's hand, and said, "This will help you defeat the school kingpin." Despite his disbelief, Oh-gi-cheol decided to accept the advice and began training relentlessly. However, the pressure of excessive training exhausted Oh-gi-cheol, causing him to fall asleep during class, not a good look for a senior. Finally, the day of the showdown arrived. The entire school flocked to the rooftop, the site of the historic battle between Oh-gi-cheol and the school kingpin. Before the fight began, Oh-gi-cheol carefully prepared a stomach pad to protect himself from powerful blows. The roars from the crowd only added to the pressure. The class president's boyfriend even brought a camera to record the moment, a milestone not to be forgotten. When the referee signaled, both Oh-gi-cheol and the kingpin launched into the fight without hesitation. Powerful punches were exchanged relentlessly, neither willing to yield an inch in front of the eager crowd. However, the kingpin quickly gained the upper hand. A powerful blow to the neck sent Oh-gi-cheol staggering. The kingpin seized the opportunity, grabbing Oh-gi-cheol by the collar and delivering a series of punches to his stomach. In the chaos, Oh-gi-cheol accidentally tripped over a rock and fell to the ground. The protective stomach pad was exposed, causing the crowd to erupt in jeers, accusing him of cheating. Enraged, the kingpin lifted Oh-gi-cheol up and delivered a final knockout blow, sending him crashing to the ground. When Oh-gi-cheol woke up, the sight before him was startling. He wasn't on the rooftop anymore, but in the homeroom teacher's office, with Mr. Han looking at him calmly. Everything, from receiving the stamp to the fight with the kingpin, had been a dream. Mr. Han calmly explained that he had helped him enter a simulated world where he could train and experience what might happen in the future. If he won, the dream would become reality. But if he lost, he would return to the moment the stamp was placed and start over. This revelation left Oh-gi-cheol unsure whether to feel relieved or worried. He understood that this was only the beginning of a long and arduous journey, and he still had much to face before he could defeat the kingpin. Now, understanding the situation, Oh-gi-cheol realized he needed another chance to change his fate. Determined to try again, he returned to Mr. Han's office. This time, however, things weren't as easy. Mr. Han, with a calm but stern expression, said, "Last time was free, but this time there will be a condition." The homeroom teacher produced a contract and handed it to Oh-gi-cheol. Without much thought, Oh-gi-cheol quickly agreed. The new wish was set. After leaving the homeroom teacher's office, Oh Gi-cheol ran into the class president in the hallway. She looked at him suspiciously and asked what had happened in the teacher's office. However, instead of answering, Oh Gi-cheol silently ran straight to the rooftop, the place where he had tripped over the rock during his fight with the kingpin. Determined not to let a small detail ruin his chance of victory, he resumed his relentless training, preparing for the next fight. The confrontation played out as before. Each time Oh Gi-cheol failed, he was returned to the starting point. But with each attempt, he gained more fighting experience. Yet, something seemed to be preventing Oh Gi-cheol from finding the true key to victory. He still hadn't grasped the most crucial point. During one of his returns, Mr. Han stood beside him, offering encouragement. "You failed because you cheated." These words struck a chord with Oh Gi-cheol. This time, he decided to set a trap at the fighting location. When the kingpin charged in with a decisive kick, he unexpectedly stumbled into the trap Oh Gi-cheol had laid. At that moment, Oh Gi-cheol seized the opportunity, delivering the decisive blow that forced the kingpin to surrender. Finally, Oh Gi-cheol achieved victory, and the glory was his. From that day forward, Oh Gi-cheol took power, becoming the new school kingpin. However, with this newfound power, he was no longer the same. He became arrogant and haughty, constantly trying to one-up the former school bully. He even tried to hit on the former bully's girlfriend during lunch. Oh Gi-cheol took other students' seats, unhesitatingly bullying and extorting his classmates. He sank deeper and deeper into this vicious path, losing all traces of his former kindness. This deeply disappointed Oh Gi-cheol's best friend. One day, he couldn't take it anymore and confronted Oh Gi-cheol, telling him he was becoming the very thing he had fought against, a shadow of the former bully. This enraged Oh Gi-cheol. In his fury, he even taught his best friend a painful lesson. Now, Oh Gi-cheol believed he could do whatever he wanted, and everyone in the school had to obey him. His disappointed friend, unable to reason with him, walked away. Oh Gi-cheol remained silent. Meanwhile, Mr. Han had been closely watching Oh Gi-cheol's every move. In fact, ever since Oh Gi-cheol signed the contract, Mr. Han had been secretly monitoring all his actions. Elsewhere, the class president and her boyfriend were reviewing the photos they had taken of Oh Gi-cheol's fight with the former bully. Suddenly, in one of the photos, they noticed a faint figure standing in the background. A blurry face, yet emanating an indescribably creepy feeling. At the same time, another student appeared, challenging Oh Gi-cheol for the title of school bully. Despite Oh Gi-cheol's arrogance and confidence in his power, he was swiftly defeated after only a few blows, shocking everyone present. Oh Gi-cheol jolted awake, realizing he was still in the homeroom teacher's office. It turned out that everything that had just happened was just another part of the endless loop he had been trapped in since signing the contract. Oh Gi-cheol understood that even if he defeated the former bully, there would always be someone else to challenge him. And if he lost, he would return to the beginning. Each subsequent challenger was stronger than the last, leaving him increasingly exhausted and weary. Finally, one day, Jai-tron's best friend also came to challenge him. But this time, he didn't come alone. He brought the former bully with him. They broke the one-on-one rule, ganging up on Oh Gi-cheol and beating him mercilessly. With his strength depleted, Oh Gi-cheol knew he had no chance of winning. He knelt down, begging Mr. Han to remove the mark from his hand. It was then that Mr. Han revealed his true nature. A cold voice echoed. "You started all of this. I can't help you." With that, Mr. Han threw Oh Gi-cheol out, leaving him to the mercy of the delinquent students. Desperate, he ran towards the mirror at the end of the hallway. But suddenly, he heard a cry for help coming from within. It was the voice of Kim Seulgi. Before Oh Gi-cheol could react, the delinquent students caught up and swarmed him. Oh Gi-cheol had no choice but to lie there and take the beating. After Oh Gi-cheol was trapped inside the mirror, no one in the class noticed his disappearance, as if he had never existed. The desk where Oh Gi-cheol once sat was now empty, but a strange symbol was imprinted on it, the same mark that Mr. Han had placed on his hand. The class president and her boyfriend felt something was wrong, but couldn't remember who used to sit there. It was as if the memory of him had been completely erased. A moment later, the class president remembered she had something to discuss with Mr. Han, and her boyfriend offered to go with her. When they entered the room, it was empty. While curiously exploring, they discovered a seal with a symbol identical to the one they had just seen on Oh Gi-cheol's desk. Things got even stranger when they found 2 contracts bearing the names Kim Seul-gi and Oh Gi-cheol. Before they could fully grasp the situation, they were startled by the sound of the door opening. Luckily, they quickly hid behind a desk drawer. Moments later, another teacher entered, inviting Mr. Han to lunch. Mr. Han agreed and left the room, completely unaware of the class president and her boyfriend's presence. The literature class continued as usual. During the lesson, Mr. Han returned graded essays to the students, but paid particular attention to the work of a girl named On Shi-yeon. He praised her writing, saying it demonstrated a rich and creative imagination. He then asked her to come to his office after class to receive a special gift. At the end of class, On Shi-yeon followed his instructions and went to see Mr. Han in his office. He presented her with a small diary and explained that, with her unique imagination, she could write her name in it and it would become hers. On Shi-yeon couldn't hide her joy and carefully wrote her name in the diary. But Mr. Han made another suggestion: write in here what you desire most at this moment. On Shi-yeon thought for a moment and then wrote in the diary that she had a boyfriend studying abroad. This was a joke she had blurted out to her classmates, and now she wrote down this wish, imagining the perfect boy she longed for. At that time, On Shi-yeon thought the diary was just an ordinary gift, but Mr. Han said the real gift held much more. She returned to class feeling bewildered and curious. The next class proceeded as usual. But what surprised On Shi-yeon was that Mr. Han introduced a new transfer student. The boy looked exactly like the ideal image she had written in her diary. As soon as he was introduced, he walked straight towards On Shi-yeon, smiled, and introduced himself as her boyfriend, just returned from abroad. Her classmates looked at On Shi-yeon with envious eyes, surprised that she suddenly had such a perfect boyfriend. After class, On Shi-yeon went to see Mr. Han to ask about this strange occurrence. He just smiled and said this was the gift he had promised her. Although a little incredulous, she accepted this illusion of happiness. From that day on Shi-yeon and the transfer student were always together, becoming the perfect couple, envied by many other students. Every day, she only wished this happiness would last forever. However, her joy was short-lived. Some time later, the boy told On Shi-yeon that he might have to return abroad. She panicked, not wanting their relationship to end so quickly. In her confusion, On Shi-yeon sought out Mr. Han and begged him to help keep her boyfriend. He just smiled and said that all her wishes could come true if she wrote them in the diary. However, this time, to fulfill her wish, she would need to sign a contract. Without hesitation, On Shi-yeon agreed. A drop of blood fell onto the diary, and On Shi-yeon's name appeared on the contract. From that day on Shi-yeon always carried the diary with her, writing in it the happy moments with her boyfriend. The two became inseparable, making many other girls in the school jealous. However, this jealousy led some students to start digging into On Shi-yeon's personal life. They discovered that her family was very poor, her parents running a small, struggling fruit stand. These malicious girls planned to spread this news to bring On Shi-yeon down. Unfortunately, On Shi-yeon overheard their conversation. She was furious and immediately wrote in the diary, wishing that the girl who badmouthed her would disappear. But On Shi-yeon had forgotten Mr. Han's warning: everything written in the diary will come true. And just like that, the girl vanished without a trace, leaving On Shi-yeon terrified. What shocked her even more was the discovery that the one responsible was none other than her boyfriend. Overwhelmed and confused by everything that was happening, On Shi-yeon wrote in the diary that she hated her boyfriend and wished he would never bother her again. This led to terrifying consequences. On Shi-yeon's boyfriend climbed onto the roof of the school, intending to end his life. A crowd of students gathered, trying to dissuade him, but to no avail. The atmosphere grew thick with tension. Her boyfriend, eyes filled with despair, looked directly at her and said, "You are my sole reason for existence. If you don't need me anymore, then I have no reason to live." His words stunned On Shi-yeon. In a moment of panic and confusion, she turned and ran from the crowd, leaving her boyfriend behind. Reaching safety, she frantically scribbled a new wish in her diary: "For my boyfriend to love me again." The moment the wish was written, Her boyfriend climbed down from the roof and walked towards her, his eyes soft. He embraced her tightly and whispered, "I hope you'll never write anything stupid like that in your diary again. I only exist because of your imagination." Panicked, she sought out Mr. Han, hoping he could help her end this nightmare. However, Mr. Han was no longer his gentle self. Coldly, he said, "You must take responsibility for what you write. I warned you." Left with no other choice, An Shi-yun decided to burn the diary, hoping it would end everything. That night, after burning the diary, she returned to the classroom. All the students had gone home, and the room was eerily quiet. But as she stepped inside, she was met with a horrifying sight. A charred figure stood in the middle of the room, the diary still intact in its hand. Her boyfriend had somehow saved the diary from the flames. Terrified, An Shi-yun fled the classroom, her boyfriend in pursuit. In her desperation, she ran into the school's information room to hide. Luckily, the class president and her boyfriend were there, busy writing an article for an upcoming school event. Relieved, An Shi-yun rushed to embrace the class president's boyfriend. But her own boyfriend soon arrived, banging forcefully on the door, demanding to be let in. An Shi-yun hid behind the class president and her boyfriend, trembling with fear. Her boyfriend, his voice cold and his eyes vacant, declared, "An Shi-yun is my only reason for being. She can't leave me." Shaking, An Shi-yun blurted out that everything started in the homeroom teacher's office where the fateful diary had caused all the trouble. As her boyfriend advanced, something unexpected happened. A figure in black emerged from the shadows and attacked her boyfriend. An Shi-yun screamed in terror, realizing this was another figment of her imagination. She had inadvertently written about a stalker, and now he was here. The stalker lunged at her boyfriend, throwing the room into chaos. An Shi-yun immediately fled the scene. After dealing with her boyfriend, the class president and her boyfriend tried to follow, but she ran straight towards the mysterious mirror located deep within the hallway. The stalker pursued her relentlessly. Finally, he caught her and trapped her inside the mirror. The class president and her boyfriend ran in a different direction, strangely forgetting who they were looking for and what they were doing. When a person disappeared, the memories of those around them also vanished, as if their existence had never been. The next morning, the class president happened to look at the charred diary she had found in the classroom. On the first page was the name of An Shi-yun's boyfriend. However, she couldn't recall anyone in her class with that name. Her boyfriend looked through old photos and stumbled upon a picture of a male student with a name tag matching the one the class president had just mentioned. Neither of them could remember who this student was, even though the face and name seemed familiar. The class president's boyfriend flipped to another photo. This one showed Mr. Han with a female student named Seulgi. Strangely, neither the class president nor her boyfriend remembered anything about her either. It was the first day of midterm exams, and the air in the school was thick with tension. But Chun Yi-soo, a bespectacled student, wasn't worried like his classmates. Instead of studying, he was hiding in the bathroom, surreptitiously copying notes onto tiny slips of paper. He knew the first exam would be difficult, and he couldn't pass without these cheat sheets. His heart pounded, but he told himself everything would be fine. When the bell rang, signaling the start of the exam, Chun Yi-soo hurried back to his seat. Mr. Han, the stern homeroom teacher, entered the classroom and began distributing the exam papers. Without hesitation, Chun Yi-soo pulled out his cheat sheets and started copying at lightning speed. He thought he'd planned everything perfectly. But his tricks couldn't fool the experienced Mr. Han. As the teacher slowly approached his desk, Chun Yi-soo's heart leaped into his throat. In his panic, he fumbled, dropping a cheat sheet on the floor. He was almost caught red-handed. Luckily, a close friend called Mr. Han over to another student, creating a timely diversion. Breathing a sigh of relief, Chun Yi-soo quickly picked up the cheat sheet and, in a desperate attempt to erase any evidence, shoved it into his mouth and swallowed it. Facing Mr. Han's sharp gaze, he could only lower his head, his face pale, too scared to focus on the exam. He felt like all eyes were on him. Finally, the exam ended, but Chun Yi-soo was still shaken. Outside the classroom, he met his friend, profusely thanking him for the save. But his relief was short-lived. Mr. Han appeared in the distance and summoned Chun Yi-soo to his office. Anxiety gnawing at him, he entered the room with a heavy heart. In the quiet office, Mr. Han looked directly at him and calmly said, "I know you cheated." As soon as Mr. Han finished speaking, Chun Yi-soo started coughing uncontrollably and then unexpectedly vomited up the crumpled cheat sheet. Despite being caught red-handed, he still tried to deny it. But Mr. Han didn't seem too concerned. He handed Chun Yi-soo a can of soda, claiming it would make him smarter. After drinking it, Chun Yi-soo felt his mind become incredibly clear. Leaving the office, he discovered he had an uncanny ability to comprehend and memorize information. Just glancing at a few lines of text allowed him to remember everything. When he received his next exam, he finished it in 5 minutes. Even more astonishing, he had enough time to help his classmates with their difficult problems. The surrounding students were amazed and stared at him in admiration. However, Chun Yi-soo's joy was fleeting. While engrossed in helping his classmates, he suddenly felt dizzy and his mind became foggy. The formulas and theories he had grasped so easily moments before now seemed distant. He realized the effects of the soda had worn off. Panicked, he rushed back to Mr. Han's office, begging for another can to maintain his newfound superpower. Mr. Han obliged, but this time with a condition. If you want to continue being smart, you must trade your memories for new knowledge. Trapped by his ambition for good grades, Chun Yi-soo didn't hesitate and agreed instantly. The pact was made. Mr. Han then directed him to a vending machine at the end of the hallway. Strangely, Chun Yi-soo had never noticed it before. It appeared to be inactive, unplugged from the wall. Impatient, he kicked the machine a few times. Miraculously, it powered on without being plugged in. He inserted some coins and retrieved the magic soda. After just a few sips, he was a genius again. All the difficult problems now seemed simple. His sudden intelligence quickly made him famous throughout the school. All his classmates flocked to him for help. Chun Yi-soo, once a shy cheater, had become the admired study god. Every day, Chun Yi-soo walked down to the end of the hallway, where the demonic vending machine had become an indispensable part of his life. Mr. Han had explicitly instructed him to drink from it daily to maintain its effects. Initially, Chun Yi-soo had simply felt the wondrous power of the canned drink, transforming him into a top student. But gradually, disturbing signs began to emerge. His nosebleeds became more frequent. His memory deteriorated at an alarming rate. He started forgetting the names of his classmates, and memories of gaming sessions with his best friend grew hazy. He was even starting to forget himself. Today, as usual, Chun Yi-soo went to get his drink from the vending machine. In his foggy mind, he feared forgetting Mr. Han's instructions, so he'd written them on his finger as a reminder. But he couldn't even recall how many times he'd already drunk from the machine that day. The more he drank, the more disoriented he became. He happened to find 2 notes in his pocket. One mentioned a pact with his homeroom teacher, and the other was a reminder to himself to quickly end that pact. Chun Yi-soo read them over and over, but couldn't remember what had happened. He only knew that what he'd written down must be important, but his memories were like vapor. Feeling lost and confused, he headed to the homeroom teacher's office. But once there, he didn't know where to begin. His mind was a blank canvas, like a puppet entirely controlled by Mr. Han. Wherever the teacher pointed, he sat. He couldn't even remember his own seat in the classroom. All his actions became mechanical, devoid of purpose or direction. Noticing his increasingly strange behavior, Chun Yi-soo's best friend couldn't stand it anymore. He decided to seek help from the class president and her boyfriend. The 3 of them secretly began to monitor Chun Yi-soo's every move. They observed him from afar, puzzled by his growing peculiarity. His best friend pointed out to the class president and her boyfriend that ever since Chun Yi-soo started drinking from the vending machine, everything had changed. He wasn't himself anymore. The class president also shared a crucial piece of information. Since Mr. Han became their homeroom teacher, things in the class had become unsettling. Several students had vanished without a trace. But what was more terrifying was that no one seemed to remember who the missing students were. The class's collective memory seemed to have been erased by an unseen force. The class president worried that Chun Yi-soo would be the next to disappear. The 3 continued to follow Chun Yi-soo until he reached the end of the hallway. They were surprised to see the strange vending machine, which they had never noticed before. The class president's boyfriend quickly snapped a picture of it. Chun Yi-soo grabbed his drink and left. But what shocked them most was looking into his backpack. Instead of books, it was filled with identical cans of the same drink. This demonic beverage had turned Chun Yi-soo into a star student. The day of the final exam arrived, and Chun Yi-soo completed the test with astonishing speed. No one in the class could keep up, and the surrounding students watched him with a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. But Chun Yi-soo no longer felt any pride in his accomplishment. He worked through the exam like a machine, oblivious to the joy of success. After the exam, Chun Yi-soo went to see his homeroom teacher. He held a short note. After the exam, find Mr. Han to retrieve memories, as per the original agreement. But when he asked about his memories, Mr. Han simply chuckled coldly and said, "Lost memories cannot be recovered." Chun Yi-soo stood there, vacant, stripped of all memories and purpose. The homeroom teacher promised to guide him from now on, like a puppet completely under his control. That night, Mr. Han led Chun Yi-soo to a mirror at the end of the hallway. He stepped inside. And so, another student fell prey to the dark homeroom teacher. The next day, the classroom felt emptier with a silently vacant seat. The class president vaguely remembered someone sitting there, but couldn't recall who it was. She and her boyfriend decided to check the missing student's desk. They found two names. One was Chun Yi-soo, a name completely unfamiliar to them. The other belonged to a classmate who had once been Chun Yi-soo's best friend. A note on the desk clearly stated that the two were best friends, but when the class president asked the friend, he had no recollection of ever knowing anyone named Chun Yi-soo. The class president and her boyfriend both felt that something was deeply wrong with this whole situation. Recently, news of a stunning freshman girl had taken the school by storm, especially after she seemingly dethroned Do-hee, the reigning campus beauty queen of the junior year. The situation intensified when Do-hee's hot boyfriend, who consistently topped the school's most handsome list, was suspected of having a flirtation with the freshman beauty. Rumors spread like wildfire, becoming the hottest topic not only during breaks but also across student online forums. Do-hee, accustomed to being the center of attention, couldn't accept the spotlight shifting to someone else, especially when her own boyfriend was involved. She confronted him on the rooftop, demanding an explanation. Instead of a sincere apology, she received a callous reply, "She's prettier, so I'm with her." His words were a blow to her pride, enraging Do-hee beyond control. She ended it all, declaring a breakup and coldly giving him permission to pursue his newfound happiness. As she stormed off, she bumped into Mr. Han. She didn't notice the sinister glint in his eyes as he watched her go. Do-hee intended to hide in the restroom to cry, but before any tears fell, she received a phone notification, a strange message from an unknown number, sending her a link to a beta photo editing app. Despite her emotional turmoil, Do-hee downloaded the app. She took a selfie and used all 36 editing tools, transforming her face into an impossibly perfect image. The real magic began when she happened to pass by the mirror at the end of the hallway. Looking at her reflection, Do-hee gasped. Her face had completely transformed, mirroring the edited photo. She pinched her cheek in disbelief, realizing it wasn't a dream. The flawless face in the picture had become reality. Do-hee's sudden transformation immediately drew everyone's attention. Classmates whispered incessantly, and students from across the school snapped pictures of her, posting them online and fueling fervent discussions. Do-hee quickly became a goddess in everyone's eyes, more radiant than ever before. Those who had admired the freshman beauty now cursed Do-hee's ex-boyfriend, calling him an idiot for letting go of such a perfect goddess. News of Do-hee's transformation reached her ex. Consumed by regret, he sought her out, kneeling before her and begging for a second chance. He showered her with sweet words, attempting to win her back. Though slightly moved, Do-hee remained aloof, not easily forgiving. However, just as she hesitated, a notification popped up on her phone. The trial period for the photo app was about to expire. Panic surged through her. Do-hee fled to the restroom to avoid attention. Inside, she frantically messaged the app developers, asking how to purchase the full version. Anxiety gnawed at her as she awaited a response. Finally, a new message arrived, instructing her to go to the homeroom teacher's office. Without hesitation, Do-hee sought out Mr. Han. Mr. Han calmly explained that the creator of the magical app was a friend of his. Feeling like she'd found a lifeline, Do-hee readily agreed to Mr. Han's terms. She signed the contract. She would receive the full version of the app and retain her perfect beauty forever. Do-hee agreed instantly. The pact was sealed. From then on, Do-hee officially became the school's goddess. All eyes, filled with admiration and envy, were on her. But Mr. Han had given a clear warning. To maintain this beauty, you must never let your phone die or malfunction, as the app only works while your phone has power. Understanding the gravity of his words, Do-hee kept her phone close at all times. Whenever the low battery warning appeared, she immediately found a place to charge it, taking no chances. While charging her phone, Do-hee happened to see her ex-boyfriend, the one she thought had come back to her, continuing his philandering ways with another girl. The sight filled her with disgust. Unable to contain her fury, Do-hee marched over and dumped a bottle of cold water over the couple. Humiliated, the hot boy and the girl cowered under Do-hee's icy glare. In a separate development, the class president and her boyfriend went to the homeroom teacher's office to investigate the contracts they had discovered earlier. To their surprise, the initial 2 contracts had now multiplied to 5. Each contract bore the name of Chun-yi-soo, a name neither of them recognized. However, among the contracts, there was one name they definitely knew: Do-hee, the girl who had recently become the center of attention for her goddess-like beauty. This worried them, sensing the situation was becoming increasingly mysterious and complicated. As the class president pondered the situation, she suddenly felt dizzy while looking at the mirror on the wall. She saw her own reflection, but terrifyingly, the image spoke to her in a cold, deep voice. "Don't stick your nose in other people's business." The warning sent shivers down her spine, filling her with a sense of dread. But as she regained her composure, the apparition in the mirror vanished without a trace. Afterwards, the class president decided to confront Do-hee, hoping to uncover something about the connection between her and the contracts. When asked if she had been to the homeroom teacher's office and signed a contract, the goddess vehemently denied it, appearing annoyed before turning and walking away. The exchange between the class president and Do-hee was photographed by the class president's boyfriend as evidence, in an attempt to track and verify their suspicions about the disappearing classmates. After the confrontation, Do-hee was quickly surrounded by other students, all curious about her beauty secrets. Basking in their admiration, Do-hee simply smiled and shared some common makeup tips. Suddenly, Do-hee's phone alerted her to a low battery. She hurriedly excused herself from the crowd to find a place to charge it. 2 female students, finding this suspicious, stealthily followed her. They inquisitively asked if Do-hee kept her beauty secrets on her phone. When Do-hee refused to share, a struggle ensued, causing her phone to fall to the ground and shatter. At that moment, as Do-hee looked into a mirror, she saw her own face crack and fragment, mirroring the shattered screen of her phone. The sight horrified her, causing her to scream and flee. The curious students immediately took out their phones to capture the scene. In her panic, Do-hee ran past the class president and her boyfriend. They immediately sensed something was amiss and decided to follow her. Unexpectedly, Do-hee was desperately searching for another place to charge her broken phone. This time, it was truly beyond repair. It wouldn't turn on no matter how hard she tried. In despair, Do-hee asked the class president and her boyfriend to leave, not wanting them to see her perceived, ugly face. But the class president persisted. She revealed the horrifying truth she had discovered. All the students who went to the homeroom teacher's office have mysteriously disappeared. Don't let Mr. Han fool you any longer. She comforted Do-hee, assuring her that her face hadn't actually changed. But in Do-hee's mind, the image of the broken, ugly face persisted in the mirror. Unable to believe the class president, she ran off again. In her frantic state, Do-hee stumbled and fell. Her ex-boyfriend happened to be passing by and, seeing her distress, urged her to calm down, assuring her that he still liked her, not for her perfect face, but for who she truly was. His sincere words helped Do-hee regain some composure. The class president also arrived, continuing to reassure her. Everything is just a trick by the homeroom teacher. You're still a goddess in everyone's eyes. Finally, Do-hee understood. She decided to delete the beauty app from her phone to free herself from the deception and illusion. But no one expected that, the moment she deleted the app. Doohee vanished as well, trapped within the mirror at the end of the hallway just like the other students. Earlier, Doohee's phone had fallen to the ground. The class president reached to pick it up, but Mr. Han's hand was quicker, snatching it up before her. At that moment, all the memories of her missing classmates flooded back to the class president. Piece by piece, the images of her vanished friends became clear. She realized they were all trapped within the mirror at the end of the hallway, removed from reality by the homeroom teacher. The class president woke up to the sound of her boyfriend's voice. She recounted everything she had seen in her dream, including the clues about the disappearances, all connected to Mr. Han. Just then, her boyfriend received a notification on his phone. A few days prior, he had posted about the missing students on the school's online forum, hoping for information. Today, someone had finally replied, setting up a meeting in a special room on the 5th floor, a place that supposedly held the secret to the disappearances. Unexpectedly, the person who had contacted them was Mr. Han himself. With a calm smile, he gestured towards the special room, inviting them in. "Look inside. The students you are looking for are all here." Mr. Han's voice was chilling. As the class president and her boyfriend peered inside, they saw the familiar faces of their missing classmates. But something was wrong. Their eyes were vacant, their smiles distorted. A sense of unease washed over the class president. Afterwards, Mr. Han led them back to his office. He demanded they remove the online post about the missing students and write an apology for spreading false information. The class president and her boyfriend had no choice but to comply. Leaving the homeroom teacher's office, the class president suddenly felt dizzy. She rushed to the restroom to wash her face, hoping to alleviate the strange sensation. But as she looked in the mirror, she saw her reflection was no longer the same. The image began to move and speak, uttering words that shocked her to her core. "Soon, I will come out and replace you." Panicked, the class president clutched her head, unable to believe her eyes. Returning to the special room where her classmates had been just moments ago, she found it empty. Her fear intensified as she looked into the mirror and saw the reflections of her missing classmates. Suddenly, Mr. Han appeared behind her. When she looked back at the mirror, the images were gone, vanished without a trace. The class president confronted Mr. Han, declaring the images of her classmates he had shown her were illusions. She demanded to know who he really was. Mr. Han chuckled and countered with a question of his own. "And who are you?" The question stumped her. Before she could respond, he led her back to his office. There, Mr. Han began to reveal the truth. He claimed the class president wasn't as good as she pretended to be. She always smiled slyly when her classmates were in trouble, but never offered any real help. "Why are you looking for them now? To satisfy your own false sense of compassion." He also pointed out the apparitions she had seen in the mirror, claiming they represented her true personality. A disturbing echo resonated in the class president's mind, filling her with dread. Mr. Han then presented an offer. "If you want to know the truth, step into the mirror at the end of the hallway. If you're lucky, you might find the truth and save your missing classmates. But remember, time is limited. If you don't return in time, you'll be trapped in the mirror forever." Driven by responsibility and a desire to uncover the truth, the class president agreed. Blood from her finger dripped onto a contract, and her name appeared on the document. The contract was sealed. When the class president stepped towards the mirror, she turned and saw her boyfriend looking at his reflection from the outside. But despite her calls, he couldn't hear her. She had no choice but to venture deeper into the world within the mirror to understand what was happening. The landscape inside mirrored the outside world perfectly, yet it was completely deserted. An eerie silence and emptiness permeated everything. As the class president ascended a staircase, she felt a chilling sensation, as if someone was watching her from behind. She spun around, but saw no one, only an unsettling, indistinct presence that sent shivers down her spine. Suddenly, a young girl appeared behind her, startling the class president. The girl wanted to lead her somewhere, but despite walking for what seemed like ages, they appeared to be trapped in an endless loop. The staircase they were climbing felt eerily familiar, as if she had ascended it countless times. Exhausted, the class president sat down, and the girl sat beside her, beginning to speak. The girl confided that she had seen the class president through the mirror and that she wasn't truly happy with her current life. She confessed that the class president didn't really want to attend school and that her efforts were solely to please others, living up to their expectations. These words struck a chord with the class president, sinking her into deep contemplation. She realized the weight of societal pressure and expectations she had been carrying. When the girl stood and walked away, the class president decided to follow a different path, hoping to find an exit. Meanwhile, her boyfriend grew worried about her disappearance. Just as he was about to call her, he received a voice message. It was from the class president. She said she was in the homeroom teacher's office. Fearing she might vanish like other students had, he rushed to the office. However, the door was locked tight, impossible to open. Suddenly, the class president appeared right behind him, to his immense relief. They returned to the classroom together. But something was different. The class president seemed transformed. She was no longer rigid and stern, but relaxed and cheerful. She even danced with her boyfriend in front of everyone. Free from the burden of being the serious class president, her classmates were surprised, and her boyfriend was overjoyed. The class president was now a free and authentic version of herself, no longer bound by the pressures and expectations of society. Elsewhere, the other class president continued to follow the young girl, who led her to a strange classroom where the missing students were locked inside. The sight filled the class president with horror and worry. She tried the doorknob, pushing with all her might, but the door seemed locked from the inside, refusing to budge. Anxiety gnawed at her, but the little girl beside her remained strangely calm. She took the class president's hand and led her back to the mirror at the end of the hall. Somehow, miraculously, the girl enabled the class president to see the outside world through the mirror. At that moment, the girl said, "If you don't get out soon, you'll be trapped here forever." But the class president remembered the pact she had made with Mr. Han. If she couldn't save all 5 of her classmates, she would never be able to return to the real world. Her heart heavy, she realized time was running out. Suddenly, through the mirror, she saw her boyfriend's reflection. As it turned out, her boyfriend quickly noticed the strange shift in her behavior and sensed something was amiss. He went to her locker, searching for clues. There, he discovered a peculiar hourglass, counting down the time the class president had to complete her task. More than half the sand had already fallen. Time was running out. The fake class president, the evil version, suddenly appeared, warning him not to take the hourglass. Despite the obvious danger, he grabbed it and ran. The doppelganger, with unnatural speed and a distorted gait, pursued him relentlessly. Reaching the mirror, she caught him, lifting him effortlessly off the ground, her eyes blazing with malice. "You shouldn't have meddled in things that don't concern you," she hissed menacingly. From the other side of the mirror, the real class president witnessed the scene with mounting dread. She tried to scream, but her voice couldn't reach the outside world. At that moment, the little girl's guiding magic abruptly vanished. She looked at Mr. Han, who had just entered, her eyes wide with terror. "He's the bad guy," she whispered, her fear palpable. Mr. Han approached, warning the class president that time was almost up. He offered the little girl a piece of candy, a bribe for her silence. Desperate, the class president asked Mr. Han how she could escape. The homeroom teacher simply chuckled and replied, "This is your dream, and you don't know how to get out." His words jolted the class president awake. Finally, she understood everything that had happened was a figment of her mind, a terrifying dream but one entirely within her control. With this realization, she knew she could manipulate everything simply by focusing her thoughts. She understood that the way out of the mirror wasn't through physical action, but by confronting her true nature. With this newfound clarity, she willed herself out of the mirror, facing her evil counterpart, the doppelganger. They stared at each other for a long moment. Both the real and the fake class president knew this was the final confrontation. The doppelganger lunged, but instead of fighting, she merged with the real class president, becoming one unified being. The moment the two selves became one, the class president woke up, free from the long nightmare. Mr. Han stood beside her. His smile was no longer sinister, but accepting. "You bravely faced your true nature. Your nightmare is over," he said softly. Everything around her gradually returned to normal. The missing classmates reappeared, safe and sound. Mr. Han, the dark homeroom teacher, vanished from their lives, leaving everything as it was before. The class president felt as though she had awakened from a protracted nightmare. But instead of fear, she felt a sense of elation, having learned so much from the experience. The world around her was back to normal, but she knew she had changed. She had matured and gained a deeper understanding of herself. Nightmares, she realized, are sometimes a way to confront our fears and mistakes in life. The younger we are, the more susceptible we are to desires and illusions. But if we recognize our errors and stop in time, everything we've experienced will just be a nightmare. The important thing is to learn from the experience and continue moving forward with a more mature spirit.